Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the main tactical themes in Arsenal's 0-0 draw at Brighton. So in today's video, first we're going to analyze the pros and cons of Arsenal's pressing. Then we'll shift to Brighton's pressing and see how they disrupted Arsenal's attack. And then lastly, we'll focus on Lacazette's brief impact in the second half. So when we break down the game and we do look at the board, we have Arsenal in a 4-2-3-1 with the only change that they made was Lacazette coming on for the injured Saka. And we ended up seeing Brighton start the game in a 3-5-2. So first we'll focus on Arsenal's pressing because they did encounter some issues with Brighton's overall attacking shape, and that was simply down to the manner in which they pressed. What you end up seeing is that the manner in which Arsenal probably should close down if they're pressing high is having Aubameyang stepping towards Dunk with Smith Rowe and Saka closing down Burn and Duffy, Lallana being closed down by Odegaard, then you can have Lokonga and Thomas Partey stepping to Moder and Gross. That does allow Tierney and Tomiyasu to push forward to close down Cucurella and Veltman, and then you have 2v2 up front. The issue that Arsenal could encounter though was that Trossard does look to drop off into the midfield zone, and he could look to shift into space and behind the fullback, specifically Tierney, who does aim to play higher up the pitch. Mope also likes to drop off a few yards ahead of the center backs to get on the ball, but even if Arsenal were wary of the movement of Trossard dropping off deeper for the overload, what you simply need to do here is have Odegaard sticking towards Lallana, and wherever the ball goes in terms of the wider areas, that wide player will close him down. And then you could have Saka, for instance, dropping off a Moder so Thomas Partey could stick on Trossard, or vice versa. If Saka's stepping towards Burn, then you would simply have Smith Rowe dropping off a bit deeper to stick to Gross, and then you could have Lokonga dealing with Trossard in those deeper areas. If Arsenal weren't looking to press high as a unit, they could have Odegaard and Aubameyang dropping off deeper and sitting in between Lallana, and then having one of the two stepping forward to close down the center back on the ball. Even if they do opt to do that, you have Saka and Smith Rowe in those narrow positions. And then what could happen there is that you could have Saka and Smith Rowe dropping off to deal with Gross and Moder, and then Lokonga and Thomas Partey tracking the movement of Trossard in those deeper areas. Essentially, even in those wider areas, if they drop off, they should still operate in a similar manner, where if Duffy does look to push forward, Smith Rowe should close him down, Lokonga should step to Gross, and then you could have Thomas Partey sitting on Trossard. And then that would see Saka dealing with Moder, and vice versa. If Burn were to carry the ball forward, Saka would step to Burn, Thomas Partey would close down Moder, Lokonga would drop off deeper, and Smith Rowe would deal with Gross. This is an example of a good Arsenal press with Aubameyang blocking off the passing lane back into Dunk, Saka stepping towards Burn, you have Odegaard stepping forward to close down Lallana, Thomas Partey tracking the movement of Moder, and you have Smith Rowe tucking centrally to close down Gross. However, the issues that Arsenal did encounter in terms of their shape out of possession was self-inflicted because they weren't pressing as a unit on a consistent basis. And what we ended up seeing was that Trossard was able to drop off into those pockets of space to receive the ball because Lokonga and Thomas Partey weren't tracking his movement. And there were times where they simply weren't even stepping towards Gross and Moder, and they were able to get on the ball freely or drop off into that midfield zone to create overloads and then help Brighton bypass that initial phase of the Arsenal press. Here's an example of an issue with Arsenal's pressing, as you have Odegaard stepping towards Dunk but blocking off the passing lane into Lallana, but over to the right you could see a 2v1 with Moder looking to drop off towards the left of Saka as he's prepared to close down Burn. Because neither Lokonga or Thomas Partey are stepping to close down Moder, Dunk slides the ball across Odegaard so that Moder could receive it goal side of Saka, and because Lallana isn't closed down, that allows Moder to square the ball into Lallana to help Brighton advance their play. Here we could see another issue with Arsenal's press, as you could see Saka stepping in towards Dunk but blocking off the passing lane into Burn. But look at the midfield zone. Smith Rowe's tucking in to close down Gross, and you have Odegaard just ahead of Moder, but no one stepping towards Lallana, and that creates a huge gap in between Lokonga and Thomas Partey, who are ball watching, for Dunk to split them, and he's able to find Trossard in between the lines to break on the counter. Another avenue in which Brighton were looking to punish Arsenal is that when they did win possession, Tierney was often caught higher up the pitch looking to close down Veltman, and that's where you would see Gross or Trossard looking to make runs into that zone to exploit space behind the left back, and that often forced Gabriel to come across to deal with that threat. This time you can see Tierney caught higher up the pitch, and you have Gross and Trossard looking to make a run beyond Lacazette into the right channel to receive the long ball into that zone, but the pass is overhit and you could see Gabriel coming across to close down before Trossard can get on it. As Brighton look to break, it's Maupay dropping off into his own half to receive the ball and freely turn to face the Arsenal backline. And with Tierney caught higher up the pitch, Maupay is looking to slide the ball across Lacazette into the path of Trossard, making a run into the right channel. However, when that pass is played, Gabriel once again does a very good job of coming across to close him down, and you could see Thomas Partey and Lacazette ready to step into the half space to cut off the cross at the front post. The only other alternative for Arsenal to combat with Trossard dropping off into that deeper midfield zone is to have White or Gabriel track his movement tightly, but they weren't willing to do that on a consistent basis. The other key factor for Brighton here was that they were pushing the wingbacks higher up the pitch, and what we ended up seeing was that they were looking to get runners in behind, specifically down Tierney's side, where they were looking to get the runs of Gross or Trossard into that space behind the fullback. But whenever they did look to deliver crosses into that penalty area, Lacazette and Thomas Partey did a very good job of dropping off into the half spaces to cut out the pass at the front post. Meanwhile, we witnessed the complete opposite from Brighton. Their pressing was consistent throughout, and they caused Arsenal problems in terms of their overall build-up. It was a simple and effective press from Potter's men. You had Maupay and Trossard closing down the center backs. Gross and Moder were constantly stepping towards Thomas Partey and Lacazette. You had Cucurella and Veltman closing down Tierney and Tomiyasu. And that's when you would see Lallana closing down Odegaard when he was looking to receive possession. That does leave 3v3 at the back, but Arsenal struggle to win aerial duels against that Brighton center back trio, and when they look to drop off into that midfield zone to get on the ball, Burn and Duffy were tight on them to ensure that they couldn't turn. This was a consistent press when Arsenal were looking to build out of the back and from goal kicks, and their attempt to play balls over the top into the path of Aubameyang simply saw him outmatched by Dunk and the Brighton center backs. Aubameyang's link-up play was inconsistent throughout. There were the occasions where he was able to combine with teammates. If we look to example, here you could see Odegaard in his own half closed down by two Brighton players, but he's looking to split both to play the pass into Aubameyang, who's positioned just ahead of Dunk. When Odegaard plays that pass, you could see Aubameyang with enough space to receive the ball and lay it off into the path of either Smith Rowe or Odegaard breaking into Brighton's half. Aubameyang lays the ball off into Smith Rowe, and that's where he locates Tierney just ahead of Veltman, and he could slide the ball across Gross to play in his left back to break down that left channel. This is an example of Aubameyang backing into Duffy and chesting a ball into the path of Odegaard free in the halfway circle, but when Odegaard looks to run at the Brighton backline, you could see that there's no support as Saka and Aubameyang are behind him. But for the most part, he struggled to help Arsenal hold up play in those areas to invite runners forward. Initially, you could see the Brighton press in full effect with the shuttlers closing down Lacazette and Thomas Partey, and Duffy tracking Smith Rowe into Arsenal's half. Lacazette looks to play the ball across Gross into the path of Aubameyang, who does drag out Duffy, and you could see Lallana shifting laterally into the halfway circle, and Aubameyang should be looking to flick the ball into Tierney to run at Veltman, but Dunk's pressure forces a loose pass, and Veltman's able to recover possession. And then you could see Tierney being closed down by Veltman stepping high into Arsenal's half, and the Arsenal left backs looking to play the ball across the Brighton wing back for Aubameyang. When Aubameyang receives the ball, that's where you see Dunk, Lallana, and Gross surrounding Aubameyang, and you have 3v1 in that zone. But unfortunately for Aubameyang, his touch is poor, and Gross is able to recover possession. And as you can see, that triangle is being formed as he looks to slide the ball across Aubameyang into Lallana to help Brighton recover possession. The only real threat that Arsenal caused from open play was when they were able to bypass Cucurella and Veltman to get Saka and Smith Rowe into 1v1s into the channel channel. Initially, it was Saka who was getting the better of Burn, but then we saw Cucurella dropping off deeper to make it a 1v2 with Lallana also shifting across, in case Tomiyasu was making overlapping runs or Odegaard was looking to connect with Saka. Meanwhile, on the opposite flank, while Tierney was consistently pegging back Veltman, on the rare occasion where they were able to bypass Veltman to get Smith Rowe into those areas, he was able to create one of Arsenal's better chances by running at Duffy and delivering across that bypass dunk and evaded Aubameyang. Here you can see Gabriel looking to clear the ball in his own box, and you have Smith Rowe checking in to receive the ball at the edge of his penalty area, but he's closed down tightly, so the center back looks to play the ball into the path of Aubameyang, but once again he's closed down by tight Duffy pressure as he checks in, and here he can lay the ball off to Saka or Smith Rowe. But Dunk's pressure forces him into a loose touch, and that results in a 50-50 with the Brighton midfielder that was closing down Smith Rowe, and because Aubameyang's touch is poor, he's unable to win that 50-50, and Brighton are able to recover possession. Arteta's attempt to adjust was to give Aubameyang more time and take off Odegaard for Nicolas Pepe. It allowed Smith Rowe to move into a number 10 role where he could continue to harry Lallana and help with the press, and then you would have two wide players that are capable of running at the Brighton center backs. Nicolas Pepe and Saka would operate in those wider areas. But what we ended up seeing was that in that second half, when Arsenal were capable of breaking into space, they simply ran offside or they made the wrong decision with the final pass. That resulted in Arteta turning to Lacazette, and in that brief period that Lacazette was on the pitch, we witnessed the difference in the center forward play. He was able to drop off into his own half to drag out Dunk and link play with his teammates, while inviting midfield runners in beyond him to break swiftly, and that resulted in Arsenal's best chance of the game. Here you could see Brighton attempting to press with Cucurella stepping towards Tomiyasu, and that's where you see Thomas Partey making a run off Moder, who's applying tight pressure ahead of the Arsenal penalty area. Tomiyasu splits the two Brighton players, and you could see Lacazette dragging out Dunk, but because Thomas Partey does get beyond Moder, he's a passing option, and you could see Smith Rowe running off Lallana. Lacazette drops the ball off into the path of Thomas Partey, and now you have two Brighton players that he could split because of Smith Rowe and Lacazette's movement. Thomas Partey splits those two Brighton players to play Smith Rowe in a 2v1 with Saka, and from here you're expecting Smith Rowe to carry the ball towards the penalty area to get a shot off. However, what he ends up doing is that he takes a poor touch towards his right, and now he can't play a pass into Saka, and he allows the defender to force him towards the outside. However, when Smith Rowe does carry the ball into right half space, he takes on Duffy 1v1 and he drags the ball to his right foot, and from this position he ends up firing an effort on goal that Sanchez can kick away. So as you can see, Brighton's overloads in central areas presented issues for Arsenal, whereas their intent to limit Arteta's men from building attacks and open play was fairly successful despite Lacazette's brief second half impact.